Ambassador Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display floating above the conference table, her face carefully neutral despite the rage building in her chest. The three alien representatives sat across from her, their expressions ranging from smug satisfaction to barely concealed contempt. The Zephyrian delegate, a tall insectoid creature with crystalline wings, clicked its mandibles in what she had learned was their equivalent of a dismissive laugh. "Surely you understand the position Earth finds itself in," the Zephyrian ambassador said, its voice carrying the mechanical translation overlay that made all alien speech sound oddly hollow. "Your species has been granted provisional membership in the Galactic Commerce Collective, but that membership comes with certain obligations." Sarah's fingers drummed silently against her thigh, a nervous habit she had developed during her years as Earth's primary diplomatic representative to the galaxy. 6 months ago, humanity had been thrilled to make first contact with an advanced galactic civilization. The discovery that Earth sat at the intersection of 3 major hyperspace trade routes had seemed like a blessing. Now it felt more like a curse. The Corvani representative, a reptilian being whose scales shifted color with emotion, leaned forward. Currently, those scales showed the deep purple of predatory satisfaction. "The transit fees are quite reasonable, considering the protection we provide. 5% of your gross planetary product annually, plus exclusive mining rights to your asteroid belt and outer planet moons." "Protection from what exactly?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice level despite wanting to scream. The third alien, a member of the aquatic Delphine collective, whose environmental suit bubbled with nutrient-rich water, made a sound like whale song before the translator kicked in. "Pirates, of course, raiders. Unscrupulous species who would strip your world bare given the opportunity. The galaxy is a dangerous place for such a young civilization." Sarah had heard this speech before almost word for word. It was the same protection racket that had been run on dozens of newly contacted species. Pay the tribute or face the consequences of being left defenseless in a hostile galaxy. The 3 species represented here controlled the major shipping lanes, the banking systems, and most importantly the military might that kept trade flowing. "And if we refuse?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. The Zephyrian's wings buzzed with amusement. "Then Earth would find itself isolated. No trade, no technology transfers, no protection. Your system would be marked as non-aligned, which tends to attract the very raiders we protect you from. A pity, really. Your species shows such promise." The Corvani scales shifted to a darker purple. "Of course, there might be certain technical difficulties with your planetary defense grid. System malfunctions do happen, especially with such primitive technology, and accidents in space can be so unfortunate." Sarah's jaw clenched. The threat was clear enough. Pay up, or Earth would face a combination of economic isolation and orchestrated attacks designed to bring humanity to heel. It was a system that had worked on countless other species. The galaxy was filled with client races who had accepted similar deals, trading their independence for the promise of protection and prosperity. But the aliens had made one crucial miscalculation. They had assumed humanity would react like every other species they had encountered. They expected fear, desperation, and ultimately capitulation. What they got instead was something that had served humanity well throughout its violent history. Stubborn, bloody-minded defiance. Sarah stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the metal floor of the space station's conference room. Through the massive viewport behind the alien delegation, she could see Earth hanging in the void, blue and white and beautiful. Her home, her people's home. "Gentlemen," she said, using the term loosely, "I need to consult with my government before I can give you an answer to your generous offer." The Delphine made another whale song noise. "Of course, but don't take too long. Market conditions can change so quickly and protection rates may need to be adjusted." "I understand perfectly," Sarah replied. "I'll have an answer for you within 72 hours. As she left the conference room, Sarah's mind was already racing. The shuttle ride back to Earth gave her time to think, to plan, and to prepare for what she knew would be one of the most important conversations in human history. The emergency session of the United Nations Security Council was called for immediately upon her return. The vast chamber in New Geneva was filled with tension as representatives from every nation on Earth gathered to hear her report. Secretary General Martinez called for order as Sarah took her place at the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we have a problem. For the next hour, she laid out the situation in stark detail. The protection racket, the threats, the impossible choice between servitude and isolation. The chamber erupted into heated discussion, with some delegates calling for immediate acceptance of the alien terms, while others demanded defiance regardless of the cost. It was President Rodriguez of the Americas Federation who finally called for quiet. "Ambassador Chen," she said, "what do you recommend?" Sarah looked out at the assembled representatives of humanity, seeing the fear and uncertainty in their faces, but she also saw something else. The same stubborn resolve that had carried their species through ice ages and world wars, through plagues and disasters that would have broken lesser civilizations. "I recommend we tell them exactly where they can stick their protection," Sarah said, her diplomatic training finally giving way to the anger she had been suppressing all day. "But first, I recommend we prepare for war." The chamber fell silent. In that moment, every person present understood that they stood at a crossroads. They could accept alien domination and live as subjects in their own solar system, or they could fight for their freedom against impossible odds. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. As news of the decision spread across Earth, something remarkable happened. The same species that had spent millennia fighting among themselves began to unite with a speed and determination that caught even their own leaders off guard. Factory production shifted to military hardware. Scientific research focused on weapons and defense systems. Most importantly, humanity began to do what it had always done best in times of crisis: adapt, innovate, and prepare to fight with everything they had. The aliens wanted a protection racket. Instead, they were about to get a war. Dr. Elena Vasquez rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the quantum equations floating in the holographic display before her. The underground research facility beneath the Swiss Alps hummed with activity as hundreds of Earth's brightest minds worked around the clock on what the media had dubbed Project Defiance. 3 days had passed since Ambassador Chen's ultimatum to the Galactic powers, and humanity was running out of time. "The gravitational resonance cascade is still unstable," muttered Dr. James Park, her Korean colleague who specialized in exotic matter physics. "Every time we try to scale up the field generator, the containment matrix collapses." Elena nodded grimly. The alien technology they had been given access to during the initial contact period was impressive, but it came with built-in limitations. The Galactic Commerce Collective had been very careful to share only enough knowledge to make humanity dependent on their continued goodwill. What they hadn't counted on was humanity's talent for reverse engineering and weaponizing anything they could get their hands on. Across the facility, teams of engineers were tearing apart alien communication devices, analyzing the quantum encryption algorithms that protected galactic banking systems, and studying the propulsion systems of the small courier ships that had been visiting Earth. Every piece of alien technology was being dissected, understood and improved upon with typical human efficiency. "Wait," Elena said suddenly, her finger tracing a new pattern in the holographic equations. "What if we're approaching this backwards? Instead of trying to contain the cascade, what if we use it as a weapon?" Dr. Park looked up from his own calculations, his eyes widening as he followed her logic. A gravitational pulse weapon. It would be like detonating a miniature black hole in someone's face. Exactly. And if we can figure out how to modulate the frequency... Elena's fingers danced through the hologram, adjusting variables and running simulations. "We might be able to disrupt their ship's structural integrity from the inside out." Meanwhile, on the other side of the facility, Admiral Sarah Kim stood before a massive tactical display showing the solar system. Red dots indicated known alien positions, while blue markers showed Earth's hastily assembled defense fleet. The numbers were not encouraging. "How many ships do we have operational?" she asked her aide, a young lieutenant whose face showed the strain of the past 72 hours. 43 combat-capable vessels, Admiral. Most of them converted cargo haulers and scientific survey ships. The aliens have at least 200 ships in our system, with more arriving every hour. Admiral Kim nodded grimly. Earth's space fleet had been designed for exploration and commerce, not warfare. But human ingenuity was already at work. Cargo ships had been fitted with missile pods. Research vessels carried experimental weapons. Even the luxury passenger liners had been converted into armed transports. "What about the civilian population?" she asked. "Evacuation of major cities is 70% complete. The underground shelters can protect about half the population if this goes badly. But Admiral, the lieutenant hesitated. The aliens have orbital bombardment capability. If they decide to glass the planet, they won't, Admiral Kim said with more confidence than she felt. Dead customers don't pay tribute. They'll try to demonstrate their power first, maybe destroy a few cities to make their point. That gives us a chance. High above Earth's surface, aboard the lead Zephyrian dreadnought, Fleet Commander Zixtal studied the primitive human defenses with a mixture of amusement and mild annoyance. The humans had rejected the collective's generous protection offer, which meant they would have to be taught a lesson. It was always the same with young species. They needed to see the futility of resistance before they would accept their proper place in the galactic order. Commander, his tactical officer buzzed. The humans are moving their fleet into a defensive formation around their homeworld. Should we begin the demonstration? Zixtal considered his options. Standard procedure called for the destruction of a major population center, followed by a 24-hour grace period for surrender. If the humans continued to resist, orbital bombardment would continue until their will was broken. It had worked on dozens of other species. Begin with their largest military installation, he ordered, the one they call Kennedy Space Center. A clean strike should convince them that resistance is futile. The massive dreadnought began to move, its hull bristling with weapons that could crack continents. Behind it, the combined fleet of the Galactic Commerce Collective spread out in attack formation. It was an impressive sight. Sleek Delphine bioships that looked like metallic whales, angular Corvani destroyers with their distinctive blade-like hulls, and the elegant Zephyrian cruisers that moved through space like deadly butterflies. What none of them noticed was the small human observation post hidden among the asteroids, its passive sensors recording everything about the alien fleet's movement patterns, weapon signatures, and communication frequencies. Back on Earth, the data streamed into the command bunker, where Dr. Vasquez and her team worked frantically to finish their preparations. The gravitational pulse weapon was theoretical at best, untested at worst, but it was the only chance they had. "Elena, we're out of time," Dr. Park called out as alarms began sounding throughout the facility. "The alien fleet is moving toward Earth." Elena's hands flew over the control interface, making final adjustments to the weapon parameters. Around her, technicians prepared the targeting systems while engineers ran final diagnostics on the jury-rigged equipment. Everything depended on their calculations being correct. "Upload the targeting solution to the defense platforms," she ordered, "and pray that our math is better than theirs." Admiral Kim watched from the command center as the alien fleet approached Earth orbit. Her own ships were hopelessly outgunned, but they weren't intended to win a conventional battle. They were a distraction, bait to draw the aliens into position for humanity's real surprise. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim," she broadcast on the fleet frequency. "Remember, we're not here to win a slugging match. We're here to buy time and make them think we're desperate enough to throw everything we have at them. Let them come to us." The human fleet spread out in what appeared to be a classic defensive formation, small and fast ships darting between larger converted vessels like ancient destroyers screening battleships. To the aliens, it would look like humanity's last desperate gambit. They had no idea how right they were or how wrong. Commander Zixtal watched the human fleet with professional interest. They were brave, he would give them that. Foolish but brave. Their small ships were already launching missiles and energy weapons, trying to damage his vastly superior force. It was like watching children throw rocks at a tank. "Return fire," he ordered. "Disable their ships, but try to keep casualties to a minimum. We want survivors to spread word of our victory." The alien fleet opened fire, their advanced weapons easily overwhelming human shields and armor. One by one, human ships began to fall, their crews fighting to the last moment before their vessels exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But as the battle raged, the aliens failed to notice the subtle changes in the quantum field surrounding their fleet. Deep beneath Earth's surface, Dr. Vasquez's weapon was charging, its gravitational pulse generators building toward a crescendo that would change the course of galactic history forever. The gravitational pulse erupted from Earth's surface like an invisible tsunami, racing outward at the speed of light toward the alien fleet. Dr. Vasquez held her breath as the weapon's energy signatures spiked beyond all their theoretical models, praying that their hastily constructed containment systems would hold together long enough to deliver the payload. Commander Zixtal noticed the anomaly first as a strange vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. His ship's quantum sensors screamed warnings about massive gravitational distortions, but by the time he began to issue orders, it was already too late. The pulse hit the lead Zephyrian dreadnought like a giant's fist, the gravitational waves resonating through the ship's crystalline hull structure at precisely the frequency needed to shatter it from within. What had been a magnificent vessel capable of destroying planets became an expanding cloud of glittering debris in the space of 3 seconds. Impossible, Zixtal whispered with his dying breath as his command center tore itself apart around him. The pulse continued outward, catching ship after ship in its deadly embrace. The sleek Delphine bioships, their organic hulls designed to flex and adapt, twisted into impossible shapes as competing gravitational fields pulled them in different directions. The angular Corvani destroyers simply cracked down their central spines like broken swords. Only the ships at the very edge of the alien formation survived, their crews watching in horror as nearly 2/3 of the Galactic Commerce Collective's enforcement fleet was destroyed in a matter of minutes. Admiral Kim stared at her tactical display in stunned silence. Where moments before it had shown overwhelming alien superiority, now it displayed a debris field stretching across thousands of kilometers of space. Her communications officer turned to her with wide eyes. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 alien vessels. They're asking for terms." Kim found her voice after a moment. "Tell them we'll accept their surrender, but only if they withdraw immediately from Earth space. Any ship that remains in 1 hour will be considered hostile." Dr. Vasquez collapsed into her chair as the weapon systems powered down, her hands shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. Around her, the research team erupted in cheers and congratulations, but she felt only a cold certainty that they had just changed everything. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. 3 days later, Ambassador Chen found herself once again sitting across from alien representatives. But this time the meeting was on Earth, in a conference room overlooking the ruins of what had once been the alien fleet. The surviving aliens looked very different now, their earlier arrogance replaced by something that might have been fear. The Corvani delegate, a different individual than before, kept his scales a neutral gray as he spoke. "The Galactic Commerce Collective wishes to renegotiate our previous offer. Perhaps we were too hasty in our initial assessment of Earth's defensive capabilities." Chen smiled coldly. "I'm afraid that offer is no longer on the table. We've had time to think about your protection racket, and we've decided we're not interested in being your customers." The surviving Delphine representative made agitated wail sounds before the translator engaged. "You must understand the galaxy operates on certain principles. Trade requires security, security requires organization, and organization requires hierarchy. What you've done threatens the stability of our entire economic system. Your economic system seems to be based on extortion and intimidation," Chen replied. "Maybe it's time for a change." The aliens exchanged glances, their different species communicating through subtle changes in posture and coloration that their universal translators couldn't capture. Finally, the Corvani spoke again. "What do you want?" Chen leaned back in her chair, savoring the moment. "First, immediate withdrawal of all collective forces from Earth space. Second, formal recognition of Earth as a sovereign system with full territorial rights. Third, reparations for the damage caused by your attempted intimidation." "Reparations?" The Delphine's translator crackled with indignation. "You destroyed an entire fleet." "A fleet that was threatening to bombard our cities," Chen countered. "A fleet that had already begun attacking our defensive forces. I'd call that justifiable self-defense." The negotiations continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The aliens had expected to face another primitive species that would fold under pressure. Instead, they had encountered something that had never existed in their carefully ordered galaxy. A species that not only could fight back effectively, but was willing to do so regardless of the odds. Word of Earth's victory spread through the galactic communication networks faster than the fastest ships. On 1,000 worlds, subject species that had accepted collective protection for generations began to whisper among themselves. If the humans could stand up to the great powers, perhaps they could too. The ripple effects were immediate and widespread. On Kepler 442b, the proud Altarian people who had been reduced to glorified miners for the past century began organizing resistance cells. In the Vega system, The aquatic Tidalis started sabotaging the automated mining platforms that had been stripping their ocean worlds bare. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned Earth Defense Force cruiser Prometheus, watching as her ship emerged from the construction yards orbiting Luna. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, humanity's industrial capacity had been completely transformed. The same factories that had once built cars and computers now produced warships and weapons at a rate that astounded even Earth's leaders. "Captain," her tactical officer reported, "we're receiving a distress call from the Kepler system. It's the Altarians. They're requesting assistance with their liberation movement." Santos considered the request carefully. Earth had declared itself neutral in galactic politics, but neutrality was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain as more and more species reached out for support in their struggles against the collective. "Set course for Kepler 442, she ordered. "It's time the galaxy learned that humanity doesn't abandon its friends." The Prometheus and her escort of 6 destroyers engaged their newly improved faster-than-light drives, modifications based on captured alien technology, but improved with human engineering. They were faster than anything the aliens had expected humanity to produce, and they carried weapons that had given the galaxy's great powers nightmares. As the human fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind, a new chapter in galactic history began. The old order was crumbling, brought down by a species that refused to accept that might made right. The Galactic Commerce Collective had wanted tribute from humanity. Instead, they had created their own worst nightmare, a species with advanced technology, military capability, and most dangerously of all, the absolute conviction that freedom was worth fighting for. The galaxy would never be the same. The era of unchallenged alien supremacy was over, and the age of human influence was just beginning. But the real test was yet to come, as the great powers of the galaxy began to realize that their entire way of life was under threat. The Altarian homeworld of Kepler 442b hung in space like a bruised jewel, its once pristine surface scarred by massive mining operations that had been strip mining the planet for over a century. Captain Santos watched through the Prometheus's main view screen as her fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, immediately detecting the signs of ongoing conflict. "Multiple energy signatures, Captain," reported Lieutenant Zhang from the sensor station. "Looks like the Altarians are putting up more of a fight than the collective expected." Santos nodded grimly. Intelligence reports from Earth had painted a picture of a proud aquatic species that had been forced into servitude when their world's unique crystalline formations proved essential for collective, faster-than-light technology. For generations they had been treated as nothing more than glorified miners in their own oceans. "Any sign of collective enforcement fleets?" she asked. 3 Corvani heavy cruisers in high orbit, Captain. They're conducting orbital bombardment of what appear to be civilian population centers." Santos felt her jaw clench. The same tactics the aliens had threatened to use on Earth were being employed against a species that had already been under their boot for 100 years. The message was clear. This is what happens to those who resist. "All ships battle stations," she ordered. "We're going to show these bastards what happens when they pick on species under human protection." The Corvani fleet commander, a scarred veteran named Kethvar, noticed the human ships as they accelerated toward the planet. His scales shifted to the purple of angry confusion. According to all intelligence reports, the humans had declared themselves neutral in galactic affairs. What were they doing here? "Open communications with the human vessels," he ordered his communications officer. "Let's find out what they think they're doing." Captain Santos accepted the incoming transmission, her face carefully composed as the reptilian alien appeared on her screen. She had studied the psychological profiles of the major alien species extensively, and she knew that Corvani respected strength above all else. "Human vessel," Kethavar hissed, his scales darkening to a threatening crimson. "You are interfering in legitimate collective peacekeeping operations. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." "I'm Captain Maria Santos of the Earth Defense Force," she replied calmly, "and I'm here to inform you that the Altarian people have requested human protection. Your bombardment of civilian targets ends now." Kethavar's laugh was like the scraping of metal on stone. "Protection? You humans destroyed one fleet through trickery and now you think you rule the galaxy? You have 3 ships. I have 50. Santos smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the alien commander's scales flicker uncertainly. Actually, I have 6 ships, and you have 47. Before Kethvar could ask what she meant, proximity alarms began screaming throughout his fleet. 3 of his cruisers simply vanished from his tactical display, their hulls punctured by kinetic projectiles traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. The humans had been firing long before they had opened communications. Impossible, Kethvar breathed, watching as his supposedly superior technology failed to track the incoming human weapons. Our sensors detected no missile launches. That's because we didn't use missiles, Santos explained conversationally. Just chunks of tungsten accelerated to about 15% light speed. Your shields are designed to stop energy weapons and explosive warheads. They're not so good against simple kinetic impact. The human fleet continued its approach, and Kethvar watched in growing horror as more of his ships fell to the invisible barrage. The humans had learned from their first encounter with collective forces and adapted their tactics accordingly. They were using the aliens' own technological assumptions against them. All ships return fire, Kethvar ordered desperately. Target the human vessels. But the human ships moved like nothing the Corvani had ever seen, their enhanced propulsion systems allowing them to dance between energy blasts with an agility that seemed to mock the laws of physics. Worse, they were jamming collective communications, isolating each alien ship from the others and preventing coordinated responses. Captain Santos watched as her tactical display showed the alien formation beginning to break apart. Human engineering had always excelled at taking existing technology and finding ways to use it better than its creators had intended. The faster-than-light drives they had reverse-engineered from alien technology were more efficient than the originals. Their weapons were more accurate. Most importantly, their tactical doctrine was completely unpredictable. Captain, Lieutenant Zhang reported, the Altarian resistance is sending coordinates for high-value collective targets. They're asking if we can provide orbital support. Santos considered the request. Earth's official policy was to avoid unnecessary civilian casualties. But the mining installations that had been stripping Kepler 442b bare hardly qualified as civilian targets. Relay targeting data to all ships, she ordered. Let's give our new allies some breathing room. The bombardment that followed was precise and devastating. Human kinetic weapons, guided by Altarian intelligence, struck mining platforms, administrative centers, and the orbital elevators that had been used to transport stolen resources off-world. Within hours, the collective's century-old stranglehold on the planet was broken. Kethvar's flagship was one of only 7 Corvani vessels to escape the system, fleeing into hyperspace with their hulls scarred and their crews demoralized. As they ran, the Corvani commander sent an urgent message to collective high command. The humans were not remaining neutral, and they were far more dangerous than anyone had realized. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Altarian resistance leader Tidal Song of Freedom emerged from her underwater bunker to see something her people had not witnessed in living memory: collective ships fleeing their homeworld. The crystalline structures that covered her amphibious form pulsed with the bioluminescent patterns of pure joy. The humans came, she whispered to her assembled warriors. They actually came. Captain Santos accepted the Altarian leader's holographic transmission from orbit, noting the aquatic being's obvious emotion. The universal translator struggled with the complex harmonic patterns of Altarian speech, but the gratitude was unmistakable. Captain Santos, Tidal Song of Freedom sang, "My people are in your debt. For generations we have dreamed of freedom, but we never dared to hope that anyone would answer our call for help. The collective has made too many enemies," Santos replied. "It's time someone stood up to them. But this is just the beginning. They'll be back, and next time they'll bring more ships." The Altarian leader's chromatophores shifted to patterns of determination. "Then we must be ready. Our people have skills the humans lack. We understand collective technology because we were forced to work with it for so long. Perhaps together we can give the galaxy something it has never had: a real choice." As the human fleet prepared to depart Kepler 442b, leaving behind a small garrison to help the Altarians organize their defenses, word of the liberation was already spreading through the galactic communication networks. On dozens of worlds, enslaved populations looked up at the stars and wondered if freedom might finally be possible. But in the heart of collective space, The great powers were beginning to realize the true scope of the threat they faced. Humanity wasn't just another client species to be bullied into submission. They were something far more dangerous. Liberators with the military capability to back up their ideals. The Galactic Commerce Collective had ruled through fear and economic dependence for millennia. Now, for the first time in their history, they were the ones who were afraid. The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Commerce Collective convened an emergency session aboard the massive space station that served as the center of galactic government. Representatives from dozens of major species gathered in the circular chamber, their various environmental suits and life support systems creating a bizarre tableau of galactic diversity united by growing panic. Supreme Director Vashti of the Zephyrian hegemony stood at the center podium, her crystalline wings dulled with stress as she addressed the assembly. As the senior member of the collective's ruling triumvirate, she had called this emergency session to address what intelligence reports were calling the human problem. "Fellow beings," she began, her voice carrying through the chamber's translation matrix, "we face an unprecedented threat to the stability of our civilization. In the past 6 months, 17 client worlds have declared independence. 3 major trade routes have been disrupted by sabotage, and our enforcement fleets have suffered casualties not seen since the breakaway wars of the 3rd millennium." A low murmur rippled through the assembly as representatives absorbed the full scope of the crisis. The collective had built its power on the assumption that subject species would remain divided and manageable. The idea that they might unite behind a common cause was antithetical to everything the galactic powers understood about governance. High Coordinator Nexum of the Delphine Collective rose from his aquatic chamber, the bioluminescent patterns along his elongated form pulsing with agitation. "The humans must be stopped before their infection spreads further. I propose immediate military action to glass their homeworld and end this rebellion once and for all." The chamber erupted in debate, with some species calling for total war while others urged caution. It was Chancellor Mordek of the Corvani Republic who finally called for order, his scales shifting through the complex patterns of tactical analysis. "Military action against Earth is no longer a simple matter," he hissed, his forked tongue tasting the recycled air of the chamber. "Our intelligence indicates they have been busy in the months since their victory. Their fleet strength has increased exponentially, and worse, they have been sharing military technology with their allies." Supreme Director Vashti's wings buzzed with frustration. "How is this possible? They are a single world, barely 100 years past primitive spaceflight. How can they match the combined industrial capacity of our empire?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kethmira, a Corvani scientist who served as the collective's chief technology analyst, approached the podium with obvious reluctance. Her scale showed the pale green of deep uncertainty. "Distinguished representatives," she began hesitantly, "our analysis of captured human technology reveals something disturbing. They do not merely copy our designs, they improve them. Their engineering philosophy appears fundamentally different from our own." "Explain," Vashti demanded. Dr. Kethmira activated a holographic display showing comparative schematics of collective and human starship designs. "We build for efficiency and standardization. Every ship of a given class is identical, using proven technology that has remained unchanged for centuries. The humans build for adaptability and innovation. No 2 of their vessels are exactly alike, and they continuously modify their designs based on combat experience." The implications hit the assembly like a cold wave. The collective's strength had always been based on technological superiority, maintained through rigid control of scientific advancement. But the humans were advancing faster than the collective could adapt. "There's more," Dr. Kethmira continued, her scales now showing the deep purple of fear. "They're not just improving our technology, they're sharing it. Every species that allies with them receives access to enhanced versions of our own systems. The Altarians are already producing kinetic weapons based on human designs. The Tydalis have modified our mining equipment into construction tools for building hidden shipyards." High Coordinator Nexum's bioluminescent patches flared with anger. "Then we crush them all. Mobilize every fleet, conscript every available ship. We end this rebellion with overwhelming force." But Chancellor Mordek's expression showed the calculating coldness of a predator that had suddenly realized it might be prey. "Our latest intelligence estimates suggest the human alliance now controls 12 star systems, and has defense agreements with at least 30 more. A direct assault would require committing our entire military to a protracted campaign with no guarantee of success. The debate raged for hours, but gradually a consensus emerged. The collective faced a choice between risking everything in a massive military campaign or finding some other way to contain the human threat. It was Supreme Director Vashati who finally proposed the solution that would define the next phase of the conflict. "We cannot match their rate of innovation," she admitted reluctantly, "but we have advantages they lack. We control the major banking systems, the primary trade routes, and most importantly, we have allies they cannot hope to match." She gestured to the far end of the chamber, where a section had been sealed off behind energy barriers and warning signs. Beyond those barriers waited representatives of species that even the collective treated with wary respect. "It is time to call in favors from our more exotic partners," Vashati continued. "The humans have shown they can fight conventionally. Let us see how they handle opponents who do not play by conventional rules." Meanwhile, aboard the human command ship Defiance in orbit around the newly liberated world of Vega Prime, Admiral Kim reviewed the latest intelligence reports with growing concern. Human spy networks throughout collective space were reporting massive fleet movements and unusual diplomatic activity. "They're up to something," she told her assembled staff officers. "The collective hasn't pulled back this many ships from patrol duty since the founding of their empire. Either they're preparing for a massive counterattack, or they're bringing in reinforcements we haven't seen before," finished Captain Santos, who had joined the meeting via holographic link from her position near the Kepler system. "Intel suggests they're reaching out to species that normally avoid galactic politics." Admiral Kim nodded grimly. Earth's rapid expansion and success in liberating oppressed worlds had been built on the assumption that they understood their enemies. But the galaxy was vast and humanity had encountered only a fraction of the species that called it home. "Double our patrols and increase surveillance of all major hyperspace routes," she ordered, "and send a message to Earth. Tell them we need to accelerate the defense upgrade program. I have a feeling we're about to discover just how big and dangerous this galaxy really is." Dr. Vasquez, now serving as Earth's chief military technology advisor, received Admiral Kim's message while overseeing the construction of the new orbital defense platforms around Earth. The gravitational pulse weapon that had destroyed the first collective fleet was now just one component of an integrated defense network that could theoretically repel any conventional attack. But as she looked out at the stars beyond Earth's atmosphere, she couldn't shake the feeling that conventional attacks were no longer the primary threat. The aliens had learned from their defeat, and they were adapting their strategy accordingly. Humanity had won the first round by being unpredictable and innovative. But the collective had ruled the galaxy for millennia, and they had not maintained that position by giving up easily when faced with setbacks. The real war was just beginning, and both sides were about to discover that the galaxy held surprises that neither had anticipated. The first indication that something had gone terribly wrong came from the Altarian Deep Space Monitoring Station in the outer reaches of the Kepler system. Sensor operator Depth of Endless Night was conducting routine scans when her equipment detected something that shouldn't exist. Ships moving through hyperspace without the characteristic energy signatures of conventional, faster-than-light drives. "Contact Captain Santos immediately," she sang to her communications officer, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with urgent alarm. "Unknown vessels approaching the system, but they're using technology I've never seen before." Captain Santos was in her quarters aboard the Prometheus when the alert came through. She had been reviewing tactical reports from across human-controlled space, noting the disturbing pattern of collective fleet movements toward the galactic rim. Now it seemed the enemy had found them. "How many ships?" she asked as she made her way to the bridge. "Impossible to determine, Captain," Lieutenant Zhang reported when she arrived. "The contacts appear and disappear from our sensors. It's like they're phasing in and out of normal space." Santos felt a chill run down her spine. Human intelligence had warned that the collective might reach out to more exotic allies, but this was beyond anything they had anticipated. "Sound general quarters and alert the defense fleet. Whatever's coming, we need to be ready for it." The first ships to emerge from the strange hyperspace phenomenon defied easy description. They seemed to be constructed from crystalline structures that bent light around them, creating the impression of vessels that existed only partially in normal space. More disturbing were the readings they generated. Energy signatures that human sensors could barely detect, and quantum resonance patterns that seemed to violate several fundamental laws of physics. "Captain," the sensor operator reported with obvious strain, "I'm reading massive gravitational distortions around the unknown vessels. It's like they're carrying miniature black holes." Before Santos could respond, her communications array crackled to life with an incoming transmission. But this wasn't the usual alien communication through universal translators. Instead, the message seemed to arrive directly in the minds of everyone on the bridge, accompanied by images and sensations that no human had ever experienced. The beings calling themselves the Void Architects had been ancient when the collective was young. They existed primarily in the dark spaces between stars, feeding on the cosmic background radiation and the slow decay of matter. To them, biological life was a brief flicker of chemical activity, hardly worth noticing except when it began to interfere. With their vast engineering projects, the message they sent was simple and terrifying. Humanity and its allies were disrupting the careful balance of galactic civilization. The architects had been paid handsomely by the collective to restore that balance by removing the source of the disruption. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Santos ordered as the first architect vessel began to power up weapons that seemed to twist space itself. "Launch everything we have and prepare for—" Her words were cut off as the Prometheus was caught in a gravitational field that compressed the ship's hull like a tin can. Emergency systems screamed warnings as the vessel's structural integrity began to fail under impossible stresses. But even as her ship was being crushed around her, Santos managed to activate the emergency beacon that would warn Earth of this new threat. The message was simple but clear. The collective had found allies that humanity was not prepared to fight. The Battle of Kepler 442b lasted less than an hour, but it fundamentally changed the nature of the galactic conflict. Human ships that had proven themselves superior to conventional collective technology found themselves helpless against weapons that operated according to rules of physics that human science barely understood. The Altarian defense platforms, built using human-enhanced technology, were simply erased from existence by beams of concentrated dark energy. The orbital shipyards that had been producing the next generation of human Altarian hybrid vessels vanished into dimensional rifts that opened and closed like cosmic wounds. Captain Santos went down with her ship, but not before ensuring that the tactical data her sensors had gathered would reach Earth. The information was fragmentary and barely comprehensible, but it was humanity's first glimpse into a level of technology that made the collective's weapons look primitive. Dr. Vasquez received the Kepler system data transmission in her laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps, and immediately understood that everything had changed. The gravitational pulse weapons that had made humanity a galactic power were useless against enemies who could manipulate gravity itself. The kinetic projectiles that had devastated collective fleets meant nothing to ships that could phase in and out of normal space at will. "We need a completely new approach," she told the emergency council that had been hastily convened in response to the Kepler disaster. "Everything we've built, everything we've learned, it's all based on fighting conventional opponents. These Void Architects are something else entirely." President Rodriguez leaned forward, her face showing the strain of the past few hours. "How long do we have before they reach Earth?" Dr. Vasquez consulted her calculations with growing dread. "Based on their apparent propulsion capabilities, they could be here within days. Maybe hours. Their ships don't seem to be bound by the same limitations as conventional faster-than-light travel." The implications were staggering. Humanity had built its defense strategy on the assumption that they would have time to detect incoming threats and prepare responses. But enemies who could appear anywhere in the solar system without warning made traditional defensive planning impossible. "What do you recommend?" asked Admiral Kim, who had been recalled to Earth as soon as news of the Kepler defeat arrived. Dr. Vasquez looked around the table at Earth's leadership, seeing the same determination that had carried them through their first confrontation with the collective. But this time determination alone would not be enough. "We need to think beyond conventional physics," she said finally. "The Void Architects obviously understand aspects of reality that we don't. If we're going to survive this, we need to learn those same principles and learn them fast." She activated a holographic display, showing the quantum resonance patterns that Santos's ship had detected before its destruction. These energy signatures suggest they're manipulating fundamental forces at the quantum level. Not just gravity, but the strong and weak nuclear forces as well. It's like they've weaponized the basic structure of reality itself. The room fell silent as the full scope of the challenge became clear. Humanity had always succeeded by outthinking and out-engineering their opponents. But how do you out-engineer beings who had been manipulating the laws of physics since before Earth's sun was born? It was Dr. Park who finally broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. What if we're approaching this wrong? We're trying to match their technology, but maybe we should be trying to understand their weaknesses instead. All eyes turned to him as he continued. These architects, they're ancient, right? They've been using the same techniques for millions of years. What if that's actually a disadvantage? What if they've become so set in their ways that they can't adapt to something truly unexpected? Dr. Vasquez felt a spark of hope. You're suggesting we find a way to fight them that they've never encountered before. Exactly. They understand quantum manipulation and dimensional physics better than we ever will, but they might not understand something that humans excel at: pure, chaotic improvisation. As the Emergency Council began to develop new strategies based on this insight, early warning systems throughout the solar system began detecting the same dimensional distortions that had preceded the attack on Kepler 442b. The Void Architects were coming to Earth, confident in their ability to end humanity's rebellion once and for all. They had no way of knowing that their very confidence might be their greatest weakness when facing a species that had built its entire civilization on the principle that any rule could be broken, if you were creative enough about how you broke it. The Void Architect fleet materialized in Earth's outer solar system like a nightmare-given form, their crystalline ships emerging from dimensional rifts that made the fabric of space itself seem to writhe in agony. 16 vessels of impossible geometry hung in the void beyond Pluto's orbit, their dark energy cores pulsing with power that had been old when the galaxy was young. Architect Prime, dissolution of all things, observed the primitive solar system with the detached interest of a being whose existence spanned geological ages. The third planet's electromagnetic signature indicated a young technological civilization, exactly the kind of disruptive influence that the Galactic Commerce Collective had paid so handsomely to eliminate. Through quantum resonance fields that transcended normal space-time, the architect entity communicated with its fleet. The message was simple: demonstrate the futility of resistance, then begin systematic extinction of all complex life in the system. The contract called for complete sterilization, with no survivors to inspire future rebellions. But as the architect fleet began its approach toward Earth, something unprecedented happened. The quantum foam surrounding the planet suddenly erupted with chaotic energy patterns that had no business existing in normal space. Instead of the orderly gravitational fields and electromagnetic emissions typical of planetary defense systems, the human homeworld was generating what could only be described as organized randomness. Dr. Vasquez watched from her underground command center as every piece of unconventional technology that humanity had ever developed came online simultaneously. The gravitational pulse generators that had destroyed the first collective fleet were now linked to quantum uncertainty amplifiers stolen from abandoned collective research stations. Experimental temporal distortion fields that had never been tested beyond computer simulations were being powered by the energy output of Earth's entire electrical grid. Systems integration is at 97%, reported Dr. Park, his hands flying over control interfaces that were part human engineering and part reverse-engineered alien technology. The quantum chaos field is holding steady, but I have no idea how long we can maintain this level of power consumption. Long enough, Dr. Vasquez replied grimly. The architects think they understand the rules of engagement. We're about to show them what happens when you fight an opponent who doesn't believe in rules. The human strategy was insane by any rational standard. Instead of trying to match the architect's mastery of fundamental forces, Earth scientists had created a defensive system based on the principle of quantum uncertainty. Every time the architect's ships tried to lock onto a target or establish a stable gravitational field, the space around Earth responded with completely random quantum fluctuations. Architect Prime, dissolution of all things, experienced something it had not felt in eons: confusion. Its weapons, which could erase matter from existence by manipulating the strong nuclear force, were being scattered by quantum interference patterns that seemed to violate causality itself. When it attempted to focus its dark energy projectors on the planet's surface, the targeting beams dispersed into probability clouds. The entity's first impulse was to increase power output, but this only made the situation worse. The more energy the architects fed into their weapons, the more chaotic the quantum field around Earth became. It was like trying to destroy a target by shooting at its reflection in a funhouse mirror. Impossible, the architect communicated to its fleet through dimensions that existed perpendicular to normal space. The primitives cannot be generating genuine quantum randomness. Our sensors indicate violation of at least 17 fundamental conservation laws, but impossibility had never stopped humanity before. Admiral Kim commanded the defense from Earth's primary orbital platform, watching as her fleet of upgraded human vessels began implementing the most audacious tactical doctrine ever conceived. Instead of trying to fight the architect ships directly, they were using the quantum chaos field as cover to phase in and out of normal space-time. Human ships equipped with dimensional stabilizers reverse-engineered from architect technology appeared without warning, next to the alien vessels, delivered devastating kinetic payloads, then vanished back into the quantum foam before return fire could be targeted. It was guerrilla warfare conducted across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The enemy is attempting to compensate by expanding their gravitational fields, reported her tactical officer. They're trying to create stable zones where their weapons can function normally. Then we destabilize those zones, Admiral Kim ordered. All ships implement Protocol Chaos, maximum randomization on all vectors. The battle that followed defied description in any conventional sense. Human vessels seem to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, their quantum signatures scattered across probability distributions that made accurate targeting impossible. When architect weapons did connect, they often passed harmlessly through targets that were no longer entirely real in normal space. But the most devastating weapon in humanity's arsenal was not technological at all. It was pure, uncompromising creativity applied to the problem of survival. Dr. Vasquez had realized that the architect's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They had mastered the fundamental forces of reality so completely that they could only think in terms of those forces. They expected their opponents to follow the same logical patterns, to respond to superior technology with attempts to develop superior counter-technology. Instead, humanity had embraced chaos itself as a weapon. Every human ship was equipped with quantum randomizers that made their actions genuinely unpredictable. No battle plan survived more than seconds, because human tactics were based on improvisation and adaptation, rather than rigid strategic doctrine. The turning point came when the human ship Entropy, commanded by Captain Sarah Kim, Admiral Kim's daughter, managed to materialize inside one of the architect vessels. The ship's quantum uncertainty field, designed to make human technology unpredictable, created a cascade effect when introduced to the architect's precisely controlled dark energy systems. The alien ship, which had existed in perfect stability for millions of years, suddenly found itself subject to random quantum fluctuations. Its crystalline structure, dependent on exact harmonic resonances, began to tear itself apart as competing probability states tried to exist simultaneously. All ships, focus on the lead vessel, Admiral Kim ordered as she watched the impossible sight of an architect ship destroying itself. Whatever Captain Kim did, it's working. The quantum cascade spread from ship to ship as the architect fleet tried to establish quantum entanglement links to restore stability to their formation. Instead, they merely spread the chaos further, creating a positive feedback loop that turned their own technology against them. Architect Prime Dissolution of all things experienced something no entity of its kind had ever felt before: genuine fear. Its eternal existence, which had spanned the rise and fall of countless civilizations, was suddenly finite. The organized chaos that these impossible primitives had unleashed was spreading through the quantum substrate of reality itself. As its ship began to phase in and out of existence randomly, the ancient being sent one final message to the Galactic Commerce Collective: contract terminated. Species too dangerous. Recommend immediate withdrawal from all contact. The surviving architect ships fled into dimensions beyond human perception, leaving behind only scattered quantum echoes and the shattered remains of one vessel that had torn itself apart at the subatomic level. In the aftermath of the battle, As Earth's defensive systems powered down, and the quantum chaos field gradually stabilized, humanity found itself in a position that no one had expected. Word of their victory over the Void Architects spread throughout the galaxy, faster than light itself, carried by quantum resonance networks that connected every advanced civilization. The Galactic Commerce Collective, which had ruled through superior technology and ancient alliances for millennia, suddenly found itself facing a rebellion it could not suppress. Species that had accepted subjugation for generations began openly defying collective authority, inspired by the knowledge that even the most powerful forces in the galaxy could be defeated by sufficient creativity and courage. Ambassador Chen, now serving as Earth's primary representative to what was rapidly becoming a galaxy-wide liberation movement, stood before the reformed Galactic Assembly in a chamber where the collective's flags had been replaced by symbols of the dozens of species that had declared independence. The old order is finished, she announced to representatives of free worlds that now outnumbered collective loyalists 3-1. The galaxy belongs to all of us, not just to those with the biggest fleets or the oldest technology. The collective's supreme director, Vashati, her crystalline wings dulled with defeat, could only watch as centuries of carefully maintained control crumbled around her. The humans had done more than just win a military victory. They had proven that the fundamental assumptions underlying galactic civilization were wrong. Technology did not determine destiny. Ancient power did not guarantee eternal rule.